Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill was brought to my attention based on a situation in Virginia Beach, but not an isolated situation in Virginia Beach, a situation all over Virginia. So I'm going to walk you through just one quick instance of what happened. December 2nd, 2016, Blue was brought into the Manhattan location of animal control centers in New York City as a surrender after he bit a resident child in the home, in the thigh and in the buttocks. December 8th, 2016, a behavior assessment was done and said that the dog had become defensive and aggressive and had an issue. December 17th, the dog was put on New York City's kill list. December 19th, the representatives from Animals Can't Talk Rescue picked up Blue from the shelter, transported him to a foster home in New York City. December 19th, Blue remained in the foster home in New York City. During this time, he was treated for pneumonia. While in foster care, he bit the resident teenager on the arm while the teen was playing a video game. Bite number 2. February 2017, paperwork to transfer Blue from Animals Can't Talk to Forever Home Rehabilitation Center in Virginia. One day later, and during this time, the one day he was in while he was in the foster care in New York City, Blue had bite number 2 and 3 in a foster home, a child and a teenager in that foster home. So that's bite number 3 and 4. February 5th, 2017, the next day, Blue was transferred to a home in Forever Rehabilitation Center in Virginia. One day later. April 22nd, Blue was being adopted out. The next day at 6 o'clock. The next day, on the 23rd, Blue began snapping and lunging at the owner. She texted the rehabilitation center. Later that evening, so less than 6 hours later, Blue is being brought back to the rehabilitation center for biting her adult cousin, bite number 5. The next day, Blue was picked up, returned to the facility. The bite was not reported to Virginia Beach Animal Control. He was just returned to the facility. So less than a month later, Linda Patterson goes into the rehabilitation center, met Blue for the first time. On the 28th, Linda Patterson fills out an application process. Then on the 31st at noon, Ms. Cochran and another employee bring Blue to Ms. Patterson's residence. Ms. Patterson, her mother, Margaret Colvin, were sitting in the chair in the living room. This is at noon, with her own dog, Jack. Jamie Cochran explained to Ms. Patterson how the electronic dog training collar worked when it was used on Blue. Around 7 o'clock that evening, they walked outside with Mrs. Patterson walked outside with the dogs. Mrs. Colvin locked the back door. So the grandmother locked the back door to the residence while Mrs. Patterson was out with the 3 dogs. Mrs. Patterson then heard her grandmother yelling for help because she had fallen. Mrs. Patterson decided to break the glass on the back door and go inside to help her grandmother. Blue appeared to get a little agitated and anxious when the glass was broken and she's yelling to her mom. Blue runs ahead of Mrs. Patterson, standing over Miss Colvin, and when Mrs. Patterson walked into the bedroom, Mrs. Colvin yelled at the dog to get off of her. At this time, the dog attacked her for at least 5 minutes repeatedly, gripping and shaking her head. Mrs. Patterson, as a mother, continued to scream at Blue and tried to pull her off, at which point Blue started going after the mother. Again, this all happened within 8 hours of the dog being there. So this is bite 6 and 7.
Senator DeSteph, I think we got the point. Have you got a cure for that?
I do, but let me just wrap up in 10 seconds on this.
10
the
seconds.
end was Miss Colvin passed away. Mrs. Patterson had her arm amputated. So our cure to this is basically, Mr. Chairman, our cure to this is basically saying that if a dog has a bite history, that it's reported, and it's reported when you go to adopt the dog. And if it's not reported, like Mrs. Patterson, it was not reported to her about the dog, about the bite history. And what was reported was the dog seemed to get anxious. And at the time, the dog had already bitten 5 people. So our way to solve this is if a dog has a bite history, then it has to be reported and it has to be told when the dog is being provided. We have an emergency alert system going on, Mr. Chairman. Just want to give you a heads up of that. Natural gas leak.
I guess somebody will tell us to leave if we need to.
I assume so. So we do put a, yeah, there you go. We should be okay. So, Mr. Chairman,
Do I have
on
the
this, we
ability
do
to
put
get
a
that off, or
$1,000
do y'all?
penalty just to ensure that this is done and it's done right. Now, up until yesterday, and I checked earlier this week and I didn't see it, there were no financial impacts. As of yesterday, VDAX put a financial impact on this. All we're asking VDAX to do is put another box or 2 on their report and say the dog does or does not have a bite history on the VDAX report. I don't believe that should be an $86,000 financial impact, but in the case of Miss Patterson and her grandmother, what's an arm and what's a life worth? I think it's worth more than $86,000, but I can't see how you would get to an $86,000 financial impact on this one. So I'm really excited to hear from VDAX on how they got there.